Welcome to Podcast Movement 2024.
That was some of the worst dancing I've ever seen in my life. That was just appalling. Truly terrible. I am not going to do the funky chicken for any dollars. I will tell you that. It's not happening. But I am knee-deep in the hoopla with the rest of you here at Podcast Movement. And I was counting up. This is actually my 500th Podcast Movement. And I want to thank you all for showing up here. So we've been doing a lot of really great things at Sounds Profitable, including our research program, which is really designed to help this industry get better, to help it level up, to help it raise its standards. And that's really what I've always been about through my entire career, such as it is in the podcast industry. It's about raising standards. And that's what we wanted to do with this study. And it's a study that we first premiered last year at this time, and it's called the Podcast Landscape. And it's meant to be really sort of our big tent look at the entire nation and how the nation consumes digital audio. And we were able to do this with the help of with a handful of wonderful sponsors. And I want to acknowledge them right now because this is a giant study. And it takes a village and some dollars to put on. So I want to thank Wondery, BetterHelp, NPR, ESPN Podcasts, Libsyn Ads, American Public Media just joined us, thank you, Paramount, SXM Media, and of course our research partners at Signal Hill who conducted this. And there's some good news and there's some bad news in this study, I think. Well, for me, it's just all information, but we'll see how you take it. But a couple of things about why we did this the way that we did that. And it is the technical term for it, it is a big honkin' study. Honkin' being something I learned in grad school. It's a number, I'm sure. We worked with Signal Hill Insights to put together a study of 5,071 Americans 18 plus. It's the largest publicly available study in podcasting. And there's a reason why I really wanted to do that. It's been a long time since we've had a really big study like this. And it's more than just a number, right? If you take a study of 1,000 people, maybe, just looking at the population, maybe there's 100 or 120 black listeners in it. And if you cut that by podcast listeners, maybe that's 50 or 60, right? That's not a lot. So we wanted to do something where we could really give adequate representation to many, many subgroups and also put out some reports that really have not been done before, right? We've never really had a good look at Asian American listeners. We've never really had a good LGBTQ plus study. We're going to have those things. And that's a result of having a study that is this large, right? And we're going to be able to pull things out of this for many, many months. And as we do everything that we do at Sounds Profitable, we're giving it to you. It's really part of our mission as what has functionally become the trade organization for this industry. Everything that we do for research, we're giving to you for free. We don't make you register for it. It's there for you to use. It's there for you to build your businesses. It's there for you to improve your show. And that's a very deep commitment that Brian and I and our newest addition, Kristen, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But we sourced this from a single source, and we conducted it exactly the same way that we did last year. So it's very trackable, it's robust, it's really solid. And we asked a whole bunch of questions, many of the same ones that we asked last year, because it is a tracking study. It is meant to kind of take our temperature every year. We asked questions about why people do or do not listen, right? There are non-listeners in this study. There are very active listeners in this study. We even asked what people's favorite podcasts were, and you'll never guess what the number one answer was. Joe Rogan. Okay. But we'll get to all that later, and there's so much data here, and like I said, we're going to be sharing it really in the first kind of big sense next week in a webinar, which I will put up a QR code for. But I want to give you some highlights here and some information as you go about the rest of your time here at Podcast Movement, some things I'd like you to think about. Last year, we asked, are you familiar with the term podcast? And it was about this. It was 95% familiar and 5% unfamiliar. This year, it's within the margin of error. So essentially, all ashore who's going ashore, everybody's heard of a podcast. They may not know exactly what it is, but they've at least heard the term, right? Now, last year when we asked people, when was the last time that you listened to a podcast? This is 2023. 28% said they had never done so, 37% in the past week, 18% in the past 30 days. And the way that we asked this question last year, when was the last time, if ever, you listened to a podcast? Well, we changed that a little bit for this year because there's a new reality, right? And it's video. And I am going to talk a little bit about video as we go on. But the good news is when we asked when was the last time, if ever, you consumed a podcast, either audio or video, we slightly tweaked the question. We really got the same results, right? So we weren't missing anything last year, as it turns out. But the flip side of that is we really got the same results. Did not grow. Now, it's not going to grow forever. But last year was 37% weekly. This year, it's 37% weekly. So the good news is we're going to announce that monthly consumers of podcasts are now 53% of the population. It's the majority of the population for the first time. That's great. But it didn't grow from last year. And growth is not assured. Growth does not continue forever. The line does not always go up, unlike it does with NFTs, for those of you who bought a bunch of those, right? The line does not always go up forever. And I don't know if we have hit a plateau. I don't necessarily believe that. But I do think that we can do a lot more to make this industry better and to make this industry resonate more with the American public. I think it's often the butt of a joke, right? There's so many SNL skits about podcasting, Only Murders in the Building. None of these things necessarily paint us in a particularly pleasant light. But there we go. I want to look at these numbers in a slightly different way, and this is something from my old media research training days. It's a graph that we call ATU graphs, awareness, trial, and usage. What these bars show are the percentage of Americans 18 plus who are familiar with the term, who have ever listened or watched, ever tried one, the monthly and then the weekly. And the thing that strikes me about this graph is that the ever listened or watched is 74%. It's twice what the current weekly user percentage is. That means for every two people that have tried a podcast, one didn't come back. One didn't come back and make it a regular part of their media diet. And that's not great. If I were to show this graph for pizza would look better, right? Have you ever tried a pizza? Have you had it in the last month? Have you had it in the last week? It would probably look a little bit better. So I think we should be at least as good as pizza, I hope. But that's certainly something that we in this room can do something about, and even those who did not make it this morning, thanks to the iHeart party last night. But we do have people listening more, and this is the good news, really. When you ask people, are you spending more or less time, if you look at those bottom two slices, 16% and 24%, that's 40% say that they're listening more compared to 19% who say that they're listening less. So we are getting people spending more time with the medium. And I know that video is playing a role in this. I hope that audio is playing a role in this as well. And I'm going to have more to say about audio in just a moment, because audio is near and dear to my heart. When you ask people what's the benefit of podcasting for them, you know, that really this is last year and this is this year. It almost didn't change at all. Right? That's a benefit of having a big honkin' sample, of course. But it really cements the fact that what podcasting is for people, it's a companion medium. It's something they can take with them. It's something that they can enjoy privately. It's something that they can enjoy with others. We'll have some co-listening data when we announce this next week. But if you look at the top reasons why people say that it's important, right? The important reasons for listening to podcasts, yes, it's topics of interest, something to listen to in the car or while traveling, while walking or exercising, audio to keep me company, right? Or audio to accompany household chores. Audio is a companion. And yes, I know that video has encroached, but video has always been around for podcasting, right? I'm old enough to remember the days of French-made TV with Tim Street, Tim May Be Here, and Jim Louderback's Revision 3, and Roxanne Darling's Beach Walks with Rocks, and those are all original video podcasts from, almost 20 years ago, right? So video has always been a part of what we do, but things are a little bit different now, and that's something that I find a little concerning. And I'll have more to say about that in just a moment. But the last bit of data that I want to share with you is some data that we collected on discovery, how people discover podcasts. And I think at 11, I'm on a panel with Ausha to talk about diving into this data a little bit more deeply as far as discovery goes. But right now, the top source of discovery for people continues to be recommendations. So, and I know you can't increase your friends and family budget, but maybe you can get better friends and family. I don't know. But we still see that 56% of people have people in their social circle recommend podcasts to them, and 54 also do the same in reverse. They also recommend podcasts to other people. So podcast recommendations continues to be the number one way that we spread the word about podcasts, and I know many of you are spreading the word about your podcasts. But what I would love to see, and this is something that I've talked about in the past, and I sort of have an idea about it. I would love if your podcast, no matter how big or small, sold the benefits of podcasting. And just talked about podcasting in general, right? Because there are a lot of big podcasts now, and there are some new big podcasts, which is great. We have, besides the sort of usual standbys, there's new entrants like Club Shay Shay is now a top 15 podcast in this research. Dumb Blonde is up there. So there are new podcasts, the Kelseys, right? Those are fairly new. And so there are new entrants. We are producing more hits. But what I would love is if those podcasts talked about podcasting. And this is a challenge that I would like to put out to my friends in big podcasting, the people behind the networks. I would love to see those stars. I would love to see those stars give back to podcasting. And that's something that I think people have the power to do. I want to see them give back. I want to see them talking about podcasting, not like it's this side project thing that they do, but I want them to give as much as they take. I want the biggest stars in podcasting to talk about podcasting. And I've often said that this industry really needs some kind of a Got Milk campaign, but there's no reason why the biggest shows in podcasting and the smallest shows in podcasting can't talk about this medium, can't talk about discovering a new podcast, can't talk about the benefits of listening to a podcast and all the places you can go to listen to a podcast, right? I want them hosting the Ambies. I want them to show up because the audience is showing up for them. These are some big shows. They're making a lot of money, but I want big podcasting to show up for this medium. I want them to show up. I want them to give back, and I want them to talk about podcasting and all the wonderful positive ways that we talk about podcasting, to fully embrace it and really turn the public on to what is great about what we do. That's something I really hope happens. So I'm gonna put that out there as a challenge. I'm also going to have a little bit of a challenge for you a little bit later on as well. But when people in their talk about podcasts with people in their social circle, you have friends, bless you. You have family members, that iHeart event, I'm telling you. You have coworkers, 32%, and then acquaintances at 34%. So people are hearing about podcasts all over the place, right? They're hearing about podcasts from friends. They're hearing about podcasts from members of their family. And people say that they're likely to listen to something that's been recommended to them by someone in their social circle. If you add up those bottom two bars again, that's 58% say that they're likely to do that. They're likely to do that because that is often how we discover podcasts. That is often how we discover new things to listen to and new things to watch. Why would you listen to a podcast recommended by someone in your social circle? I flagged this because it was almost identical to last year, with one exception. I want to keep up with what my friends are talking about. Last year was 35%. This year it's 24%. We're sick of our friends all of a sudden. Maybe we've heard enough from our friends. But mostly these tracked with last year. I like to learn new things. My social circle has good taste. I've had good experience. I'm always looking for new podcasts. No one's going to recommend a better podcast for you than a friend, someone who knows you well, right? So that continues to be, I think, a really big part. Why are you unlikely to listen to a podcast? Well, the top reason is I don't listen to podcasts, or I'm not looking for new podcasts. And this was another, it's a small number here, but there were a couple of other data points in this study that suggested people maybe weren't as curious about new podcasts as they used to be, right? Do you look for another one when a limited series is over? Now, the percentage of people who said no actually crept up a little bit. And that's why it's really important for us to continue talking about podcasts, not just about your podcast, but in your shows, big or small, to talk about the benefits of podcasting and talk about how it is a companion, it is a friend, it is something that you can take with you wherever you go, whatever you're doing. We need to really sell those benefits home, right? Last year, we asked, aside from personal recommendations, which was the number one answer, which of the following are ways that you find your podcasts? And last year, the number one answer here was YouTube at 48%. And then searching on the internet, 30%, and so on. That was last year. This year, it's even more towards YouTube. Now, I want to talk about YouTube a little bit. There's no question that being able to have a show also on YouTube is an advantage. There's no question about that. I'm not telling you you have to put your show on YouTube, but you ought to be on it somehow, right? It may not be the place for the podcast, but it's a wonderful place for the podcaster. And I have a feeling that the smartest advice I think I can give you about this is if you can put it on YouTube and it's of at least the same quality, then do it. But I will also tell you the same thing that my mom used to tell me when I would do something very bad and then I would lie about it. Don't make it worse. And that's really, I think, the best advice I can give you about YouTube. If what you put out there as a video product is not at least as good as your audio product, don't do it. Do something you're proud of, right? Do something you're proud of, because you've only got that one chance to earn that audience. So do something you're proud of. Now, for many people, it's fine to just put a camera on people talking into microphones. That's all that people expect. You don't need high production values. But there's no question that people are discovering podcasts through YouTube. It is easily the number one source after recommendations now. And you kind of have a place there. But don't make it worse, as my mom would tell me. So a couple things that I want to talk about. The rest of this data, and it'll be a full hour of stats and jokes next week. You're going to want to be there for that. There's the QR code to sign up. Again, it's free. It's next Wednesday. And I'll be talking a lot more about churn and the reasons why people don't listen and a sundry miscellany of data tidbits for your enjoyment and satisfaction. But I also have a charge for you. And I've already sort of given it, right? I want big podcasting to show up for this medium. And I want you to show up for this medium. And I want you to talk about the benefits of audio. Yes, video has always been a part of podcasting, and video is very, very important. But I want to share something with you. When I was growing up, I grew up in Down East Maine, which I understand from many true crime podcasts is potentially the murder capital of the world. I was not murdered. But it was rough up there, let me tell you. And I didn't have very many sources of entertainment. When I was much younger, we didn't even have cable yet. I got 3 TV channels. 2 of them were from Canada. That's why I still say sorry a lot. But I could listen to the radio, and I could listen to Larry King overnights. This is before Larry really kind of mailed it in on TV. He did a wonderful overnight radio show. And if the weather was right, I could listen to it with a radio under my pillow at night. And I could go to sleep that way, right? It was AM. It was coming from Boston, WBZ in Boston, and I could listen to it. And it was a companion. It was a friend to me. It was something that I could lose myself in, right? And that's the gift of audio. And I don't want us to lose that. Yes, video is incredibly important, but we need to talk about audio. We need to talk about how audio really can go anywhere with you, how audio really can be a companion, can be a friend. Here's something that's true. Audio reaches our brain faster than video. When video comes in through our eyes, there's all these rods and cones. I don't know. It starts as electricity, converts to chemicals, and then back to electricity again, right? But when sound comes in through your ear, it's immediate. The hair in your ear tickles and sends electrical signals right to your brain. It's incredibly powerful. It's why when you walk into a Chili's and they throw water on the sizzling pan and you hear that sizzle, You say, you know, I'm not going to have the Baja chicken salad today. I'm going to have fajitas, right? Sounds incredibly powerful, and it still blows my mind that there are only less than 300 audio trademarks in the world. That kind of blows my mind. When you think about how many books are trademarked and terms and concepts, it's still under 300, right? The very first one was the NBC chime. You can probably hear that in your head. Homer Simpson's "Dope" is also one, right? The Pillsbury Doughboys giggle is one. These are all registered sound trademarks. It's less than 300 of them. But they are an immediate conduit to the soul. They're an immediate conduit to emotion. They're an immediate conduit to companionship, to friendship, and to everything that makes a podcast really special. And I don't ever want us to lose that. And yes, there's opportunity in video. And yes, there's discovery potential in video. But we can't ever lose what makes us special. I asked Brian, my partner, to get me a can of Liquid Death. If you've ever had a call with me, a Zoom, a Teams, a Skype, or whatever, you've probably seen me drinking from a can of Liquid Death. And imagine my shock and horror when he came back with this 12-ounce can of Liquid Death. This is not going to murder my thirst, my friends. It's barely going to maim it. It might inconvenience my thirst briefly. They put it in this 12-ounce can so it can be distributed in more places. It can fit in more machines. And that's certainly what video is like for you, right? It's another machine for you to put your beverage or your food or whatever, your product. But this can sucks. It's missing 7.2 ounces of thirst-murdering water, and it's not special anymore. I think it's a mistake that they did this. Yeah, they can put it in more machines, but it's not what makes Liquid Death, right? What makes Liquid Death special is that can. And I don't care if it doesn't fit in a traditional machine. I go out of my way to buy it. This, I have no interest in whatsoever. Let's not forget what makes us special. And that is audio. That is the spoken word. It's got to work as an audio-first medium because that's truly how people can take us with them throughout their day, and we can really be a part of what they do. So grab the opportunities of video, but never forget to sell the benefits of audio, because audio to me is really, I don't personally watch video podcasts. I have nothing against the people that do. I'm sure they're fine people. But let's not forget that. Let's talk about the medium. Let's show up for the medium. Hold your heads high. Raise your standards. And have a great show. Thank you.
When Podcast Movement 24 wraps up, that only means the fun has just begun. Next year, Podcast Movement will be bringing you 2 big events, and we hope to see you at them both. This March 31st through April 3rd, Podcast Movement Evolutions debuts in the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois. The podcast industry is changing, and Evolutions will be the place to come together, learn about, and discuss it all. Then, next summer, Podcast Movement heads back to where it all began over 10 years ago, when we take the world's most important gathering of podcasters back to Dallas, Texas. Tickets for both events are on sale now at podcastmovement.com/2025. Register today so you don't miss the must-attend podcasting events of 2025. We'll see you there.